Then your Sports Central, we go over our next team prediction of this offseason, and it's going to be over the Illinois Fighting Illini, a team that went 8-5 overall in the 2022 season. This was a true surprise team of the 2022 season. They definitely exceeded expectations. A great year for this team. You could have made an argument that this was the best team in the Big Ten West last year. About this team being 2023 and whether or not this team could potentially be even better in the 2023 season is what we'll be talking about here today. We'll be analyzing this team and predict their schedule game by game in this video. Let's get started with a quick recap of 2022. Once again, the record was 8-5, and this was a team that started out the season 7-1. They had 7 wins heading into November. I don't think anyone could have imagined that in the beginning of the season, but I mean, especially after they lost to Indiana 23-20 in week 2. I mean, of course, actually, that was week 1. They played in week 0 against Wyoming, which they got a nice win there, 38-6, then lost to Indiana there on a Friday night by 3. So, I mean, a 1-1 start really wasn't too surprising, especially that loss to Indiana. I mean, it was definitely disappointing, but it wasn't surprising by any means at that point in the season. But came back, beat Virginia 24-3, nice win there. Shut out Chattanooga 31-0, and then this was really where Illinois started to catch some attention. They beat Wisconsin on the road 34-10, destroyed the Badgers. They're a team that's known for having a great defense, and Illinois had no problem scoring 34 on them. And then the next week came back, beat Iowa 9-6, low-scoring matchup there against the Hawks. Then beat Minnesota 26-14, beat Nebraska on the road 26-9. So, I mean, the way this team played in October, I really believe that they could have competed really against anyone and put up a really good fight. So, I mean, this was a really strong team in October, and so heading into November, the expectations were high. This was the favorite in the Big Ten West heading into November, which is just insane to think about, because in the preseason, this was expected to be bottom 2 team in the Big Ten West, maybe the worst, and they turned out to be at the top. And, of course, did lose to Michigan State, lost to Purdue, both games within a score. And that Purdue loss especially really put a dent in their hopes of winning the Big Ten West. Purdue eventually won the division, but you definitely could have made an argument that Illinois could have been the better team between the two as a whole throughout the entire season. I would say Illinois was just the more dominant team, and defensively this team was brutal. But, I mean, then Michigan, that Michigan game came down to the wire. Illinois had a really good chance to win that one. It was like 17-16, 30 seconds left. Michigan goes down, gets a field goal to win it. Tough loss there, but the way this team fought against Michigan, a team that truly could have won the national title last season, it really goes to show how impressive this team was last season and a true underdog this team was. And they beat Northwestern 41-3, no problem to finish out the regular season. So 8-4 heading into the postseason. Took on Mississippi State in the Relia Quest Bowl, lost this game 19-10. So a tough way to finish out a great season for this team. But the way that Brett Bielema was able to shape this team into a true Big Ten contender, I would say, in 2022, it was really impressive. I mean, the way this team was defensively especially was really incredible. So it really brings a lot of optimism for this team looking forward to 2023. And with that, let's look at your roster before the season. So Tommy DeVito is gone. He was obviously the starting quarterback for this team last year, Syracuse transfer. Had some good experience, but the expectations were really low for him because of how long he played, and really he wasn't terribly impressive. So, I mean, last season he had a really good season overall, 2,700 yards of passing, just about, with 15 touchdowns, 4 picks, 70% completion rate. So pretty good stat line for him. And then the backfield, obviously Chase Brown was such a true power for this team last season, putting up nearly 1,900 yards of total offense, 13 touchdowns. It was brutal to stop him for any defense, that's for sure. And so it's going to be tough losing him. That is definitely, I'd say, the most significant loss of this offense. The receiving core looks pretty good. Isaiah Williams coming back, same with Pat Bryant and Casey Washington. You do lose your third wideout in Brian Hightower. Otherwise, 3 of your top 4 are coming back. You also return Reggie Love III, who last season put up 300 yards, 2 touchdowns. So he's going to step up into the main role. But it's tough to believe that we're going to see a guy like Chase Brown in this backfield in 2023. It's going to be tough to replace him. This offense is definitely going to look a bit different. The receiving core overall is good, but and you got Luke Altmaier coming in from Ole Miss, which we haven't seen him play too much. although he was behind Jackson Dart last season. And Jackson Dart really isn't too great of a quarterback. So we'll see what Altmaier can do. That's definitely a big looming factor, I do think, for this team. But Tommy DeVito had very low expectations heading into 2022. He turns out to be a good quarterback, very capable, and turns out Illinois was a really good team last season. So, it's tough to sleep on this team given how big of a surprise team they were in 2022. You lose 1 on the O-line, 1 on the D-line, 2 linebackers, and then 4 in the secondary. So this defense definitely loses multiple key players, but I do think, though, Brett Bielema as a head coach, he knows how to coach in the Big Ten, and that is a true reason why I feel like this team can't be slept on looking forward to 2023. I know that their expectations aren't terribly high for 2023. They're still expected to get to a bowl game, which I definitely think is very much within reason for this team. They should be in a bowl game in 2023 again, but they don't have sky-high expectations of, say, winning the West. Not everybody thinks this team is going to win the West. Most expectations are it's going to be Wisconsin or Iowa. And so with all that considered, can this team remain a Big Ten contender in 2023? And I definitely think so. You consider, once again, Brett Bielema as the coach, the talent that still remains on this team. There's a lot of potential here for Illinois and a lot of upside. This is a team with a very high ceiling. Your transfer portal and recruiting now. Luke Altmaier, obviously mentioned him coming in from Ole Miss. And then John Paddock's coming in from Ball State, who will likely be the second or third quarterback on this team here. Brian Hightower's off to Cal. Tanner Arkins coming in from Colorado State. You got Denzel Daxon coming in, defensive lineman from Ohio. You lose Calvin Hart, linebacker to Oregon State, and then you bring in Nicario Harper, safety from Louisville. So transfer portal hasn't been terribly active for this team. You got a couple of key players coming in. Obviously, I do think Nicario Harper has an immediate impact. Luke Altmaier, obviously starting quarterback, or expected to be here in 2023. Recruiting-wise, this team is 42nd in the country, 8th in the Big Ten. You got 3 4-stars coming in and 23 stars, so not too bad for Illinois. Kind of middle of the road in the Big Ten. And I've got this team at an 8 out of 10 on the future forecast meter. Honestly, it could be a 9. I think Brett Bielema, if he can stick around with this team, I think Illinois could be a contender in years to come. If you consider the way this team looked heading into 2022 and what Bielema was able to do with this team in 2022, it was just very impressive what he did. So you can't forget about that as we look forward to 2023. And with that, let's take a look at the schedule now. So you got Toledo in week 1 and then Kansas on the road in week 2. This is a very interesting matchup here. You consider Kansas last year finally got back to a bowl game, first time in forever, and they're looking decent heading into 2023. It's been a while since Kansas has had any expectations heading into a season of maybe being a bowl team, but Kansas is definitely a team with talent, so you got to keep an eye on them. That is not a matchup to overlook there in week 2. Then you got Penn State at home, tough conference game there in mid-September. Then FAU comes to town on the 23rd. Purdue on the road, Nebraska home on a Friday night, Maryland on the road. You got Wisconsin at home, Minnesota on the road, Indiana at home, Iowa on the road, and then Northwestern at home to finish out the regular season. So looking at September here, Toledo, an easy win there. You should take care of them, no problem. Then Kansas on the road. This is pretty much a 50-50 game here. Definitely a very intriguing matchup between two teams that usually don't have very high expectations. So that could be a fun one there for sure. But I'm going to take Kansas. I do think the Jayhawks get the win there. I went back and forth on that one quite a bit. I just think Kansas being at home, they don't even have that much of a home field advantage. Maybe they do somewhat this season, but I do think Kansas gets the win there in a close one. Definitely could go either way. And then Penn State, I do want to favor Penn State there. I think Nittany Lions are just the better team, and defensively they're going to be tough, especially against this Illinois offense that's still, I think at the beginning of the season, still some things to work out. So I do think you lose that one. Then FAU, you beat them pretty easily. So you're 2-2 heading into the second month. You got Purdue on the road. You beat them. I think Purdue falls off a decent amount. So you get a nice win there on the road. Then you beat Nebraska at home. So that puts you at 4-2 heading into the Maryland matchup. And the Terps next season could be a decent team. I do think they're somewhere in between 7 and 9 wins, probably leading more towards 8 to 9 actually. So I do think that's a tough one there, and I have you losing to Maryland. And then you got Wisconsin at home. You get a nice win against Wisconsin here. Last season, you took care of them no problem in Camp Randall. So, and Wisconsin next year should be a decent team. Luke Fickell, I really like him as a head coach, and I do think Wisconsin is able to be right up there in contention and win the West. But I do think you get a really nice win there at home against them. And then you go to Minnesota. I do think you drop this one. Minnesota, maybe not quite as talented of a team as, say, Wisconsin is. But I do think on the road there, I'm going to favor the Gophers to win that one. But definitely a 50-50 game there as well. Indiana, beat them no problem. Iowa on the road. Iowa's definitely a solid team. They finally got a halfway decent quarterback. So I do think the Hawks will be improved in 2023. I really would not be surprised if they won the West. It's either Wisconsin or Iowa for me. Illinois is not far behind. I honestly don't know which way to lean with that, but I do think you lose to Iowa there. And the Northwestern at home, you beat them easily. So I've got you at 7-5 next season. But I will say this, though. I do think the floor is not very low for this team. It's either 5-7 or 6-6. I do think this team gets to a bowl game in 2023. It's just a matter of what the ceiling is, and I do have the ceiling pretty high for this team at 10-2. I do think you lose probably to Penn State. But the thing is, though, Penn State is still a winnable game. But I'm going to take Penn State there for sure, and then you're probably going to lose one more for sure. So I do have 10-2 at the ceiling, but once again, the sky's the limit for this team. That definitely surprised in 2022. 7-5, obviously the prediction, but I will say 7 or 8 wins is probably my prediction for this team. It could absolutely go either way. And 5-7 is the floor. That's the worst possible record this team could have, even though I kind of want to put 6-6 for that, just because I really do have confidence in this team. But it's definitely an interesting team. This could be a great year for Illinois. I do have them at 7-5, but let me know your thoughts in the comments below on this team, and I appreciate you guys all watching as always. Stay tuned for more from All Sports Central. Catch you on the next one.